Olha só, hein? Estamos ao vivo mais uma vez. I forget. Yeah, now everything is good. Estamos ao vivo mais uma vez, olha só, e hoje com a sensacional Sasha Rosenbaum aqui para falar com a gente. Muito bom, muito bom. Hey, Sasha, thanks a lot for accepting to be here speaking to us. Thank you.
Thank you for inviting me. I'm always happy to be here.
Oh, so nice. I had the opportunity to see your talk sometimes, and always is so nice, so good to hear you talking. And I'm sure that the people will love your talk as well here. Thank you, thank you. So, could you make yourself introduce to people that maybe lives in another planet and don't know you and know about you?
Sure. I'm not that famous, so I'm sure a lot of people haven't heard about me. So I'm Sasha Rosenbaum. I started my career as a software developer, and then I progressed to sort of doing DevOpsy stuff, and then I progressed to program management, product management, whatever we call it these days. So sort of been in technology for about 15 years. And now I'm going to do a lot of speaking about various things that, are happening, because I think it's also important to get the message out about different things that we're doing. I worked for Microsoft for about 4 years, and then I transitioned over to GitHub. So my talk kind of involves both Microsoft and GitHub, and sometimes I say we about Microsoft, sometimes I say we about GitHub. It just kind of happens. So, bear with me on that.
Oh, so nice, so nice. Pessoal, olha só, hoje vai ser sensacional, hein? Afinal, nós temos a Sasha aqui, direto lá do GitHub, para falar como foi essa transição da Microsoft para o mundo open source. Então, se eu fosse vocês, eu assim, não perdi essa oportunidade de assistir. Eu preciso de vocês, que vocês façam o seguinte, deixa eu pegar aqui só um minutinho, olha só o meu retorno. Eu preciso que vocês façam o seguinte, dê aquele joinha, dê aquele like para que nós possamos bater a primeira meta de 100 likes, ok? Eu não vou enrolar muito hoje, vou liberar aqui para que a Sasha possa falar com vocês, porque afinal ela é a estrela de hoje, certo? So, ladies and gentlemen, it's a huge honor to have you here, Sasha. And feel free to return other times. You always is welcome here, right? So,
thank you.
Sasha, the stage is yours.
Have fun. So let me know if I'm sharing my screen right now, if it's on.
Yep.
All right. So I'm going to sort of kick into this. So today, very appropriately, because we're on LINUXtips, we're going to be talking about Microsoft's journey to open source. Right? And since I already did my introduction, I do still have a slide, which has a big picture of myself. That was an advice for someone smart, so I've been using it ever since. This picture is from DevOps Day Chicago. So this is a conference that we run in Chicago. I know Brazil now has lots of DevOps Days as well, and I spoke at one of them, and it was my pleasure and my honor to be there. So yes, DevOps Day Chicago also going to happen this year. I don't know if it's going to be in person or virtual, probably virtual, so you probably can join us there when we will be sharing talks from amazing people as well. So let's talk about the Microsoft history. So this is our logo right now, but it didn't always look like this. Microsoft is like a 45-year-old company now. So at one point, like, I love this one. Briefly, we had like a logo that looks like a metal band. So I still want a t-shirt with this. Even before that, it looked like this, and then like this, and like before everything, it was just basically ASCII characters, because it started with like these very basic computers. And so Bill Gates also looked a lot different back in the day. And back in the day, they were writing software for these like, this was like a first commercially successful computer, like personal computer, right? It was called the Altair. And back in the day, they developed software for these computers. And so back then, it was often developed by hobbyists. And so Bill Gates had his own opinions on the hobbyists. So a lot of the hobbyists were just basically copying over software from one another, right? Kind of what we do today with open source, right? But back in the day, Bill Gates advocated strongly that software should be purchased, and that basically when you copy software over, you are basically stealing software. And then Microsoft did not agree with the GPL, and there was a lot of opinions in the Microsoft community about how, this open source thing is not good, even including, Steve Ballmer taking it as far as saying Linux is a cancer. And Linux was really a bad word at Microsoft, and everything connected to Linux was like a very bad thing. And universally, it was kind of understood that these were two powers that are against each other. And then fast forward to today, Satya Nadella can stand in front of a slide that says Microsoft loves Linux, and this is kind of mind-blowing for a lot of people, right? And it's also, so this is a quote from, I think, 2019, where basically Satya is saying, hey, judge us by our actions today, and in the recent past, instead of like looking so far back. But so what happened and how did it happen that we suddenly decided to embrace open source? So just a little bit of a timeline here. In 2014, Satya first announced kind of the Microsoft loves Linux approach in the first place. And we've created the first Microsoft organization in GitHub, so the first open source organization. And then in 2015, we released Visual Studio Code. It was open source. In 2016, Microsoft joined the Linux Foundation, which blew a lot of people's minds, right? And then it kind of progressed from there. In 2018, Microsoft acquired GitHub. And 2019, so sort of last year, in the end of last year, we see the stats for Microsoft has 25,000 engineers contributing actively to open source projects, and has about 9,000 open source projects under Microsoft organizations. So it's kind of insane. From a single organization in 2014, we went to 9,000 projects and 25,000 engineers in 2019 contributing actively to open source. So how did we go on this journey? And how could you maybe in kind of your organization, if you're still not embracing open source, how could you possibly get started with that? So I'm going to kind of go through 7 steps just because 7 is a good number, and talk about how we went on this journey. So the first step here is just to consume open source responsibly. Hold on, I'm going to just restart sharing real quick because I'm having a little bit of a problem here. If that, oh man, I do not know what the problem is, but my Microsoft-based software called PowerPoint is freaking out altogether. Well, that always sucks, right?
Eu vou puxar aqui, ó. Tirei a janela. I removed the window, your yes, screen.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm just going to start it real quick. I don't quite know what happened there, but hopefully it restarts okay. Nah, thank you for doing this. Minor technical difficulties. Man, it's not like even.
No, everything is so good.
It's funny because like I work both on a Mac computer and on a Microsoft, like on a Windows computer. And it's funny because like I'm on a Windows computer right now, and you can just blame Microsoft for everything here because like PowerPoint and Windows and everything, it still doesn't even want to start. I don't know what's going on. The problem is it doesn't have.
Sorry.
Yeah, go ahead.
Olha só, enquanto isso, vocês façam o seguinte, durante a apresentação da Sasha, se vocês quiserem fazer perguntas, façam as perguntas e no final eu faço para elas. Eu conversei com ela, a gente vai fazer 3 perguntas aí para ela, para que ela possa responder para vocês. Então, vão fazendo as perguntas aí, eu vou selecionando tudo aqui já para vocês, beleza? Não esqueçam, hein? E vamos seguindo lá com a sensacional talk da Sasha. Eu acho que os problemas já estão sendo solucionados lá. Everything's good?
Nope, it's not, but I don't know why. Hold on.
Ok, no problem. Uma coisa que eu ia pedir para vocês é o
Literally never
seguinte...
happened before.
No worries. Uma coisa que eu ia pedir para vocês é o seguinte: ainda nós não chegamos lá no nosso querido idolatrado 100 likes, hein? Isso é super importante para que nós possamos levar essa mensagem para frente, certo? Agora nós estamos aí com 126 pessoas assistindo agora. Então, bora lá bater esses 100 likes aí bonitinho, beleza? Enquanto nós vamos resolvendo aqui os problemas técnicos. Lembrando sempre que nós estamos ao vivo aqui na internet, na rede mundial dos computadores. Então, aqui nada não é gravado.
I'm going to reboot my computer because I don't know what's wrong, but it's not fixing itself. So I'm
okay.
Turn it off and on again.
Ok. So, ela vai rebootar o computador dela. Ela rebutou já, ó, aqui, ó, deixa eu tirar aqui. Olha só, ela vai rebootar o computador dela e daqui a pouquinho ela volta para continuar com essa talk sensacional, certo? Bem, o que eu quero de vocês aqui agora é o seguinte, que é super, hiper, mega importante, é que vocês interajam bastante, que vocês interajam não somente hoje com a talk, com o talk da Sasha, mas com outras também, nas outras talks, né, nas que vierem pela frente. Por quê? É muito importante que vocês comentem, que vocês interajam dando like ou dislike, caso você não curta, porque isso faz com que o YouTube leve esse vídeo mais para frente. E para gente é super importante ter mais e mais pessoas falando aqui, né, na Fique em Casa Conf, mas é super importante que as pessoas também tenham acesso a essas informações, beleza? Esse é o primeiro recado. O segundo recado, lembre-se sempre que nós estamos na conferência Fique em Casa Conf, justamente para te dar mais um motivo para que você fique em casa, certo? Fique em casa, esteja em casa, se for possível para você, evidente, se você puder trabalhar de casa, ou então se você não tem um trabalho vital para a sociedade, aí se você tem, enfim, se você consegue ficar em casa, fique em casa, porque é super importante nesse momento para que outras pessoas que não têm outra alternativa, que precisam trabalhar, possam fazer isso com mais tranquilidade, certo? O que acontece aqui? Olha só, a Michelle falou, fala da agenda dos próximos dias. Eu vou pegar aqui, deixa eu abrir aqui uma janela e vou abrir lá o nosso repositório, né, do Fique em Casa. Olha só, deixa eu pegar aqui, bonitinho, fazer aquele share screen. Application é esse daqui, olha só. Tá aí, tá vendo? Esse cara aí é o nosso repositório, onde estão todos os palestrantes, todos os detalhes de como que funciona essa bagaça e tudo mais. Aqui nós temos todos os palestrantes que já estão confirmados. E aqui o calendário, tá vendo o calendário aqui bonitinho? Então nós temos aqui, ó, essa semana, olha só, hoje é a Sasha, amanhã tem o Marcelo, tem a Carol, tem o Bruno Rocha, tem uma galera super, super, hiper, mega legal. Olha só, a Tasha is back.
Sorry, it's still coming up, so okay. I am hoping it's going to work better than it did before.
No worries. Let's see. Cadê? Share screen was canceled. Can you share your screen?
Not yet.
Okay.
No, have a conversation, I feel like.
Okay, perfect. So, olha só, então já sabemos, deixa eu compartilhar, então vou voltar aqui com a minha tela, só para mostrar a galera ainda que tá para colar, que tá para vir aí para o evento, né? Então essa semana nós vamos ter aí, olha só quem que nós vamos ter aqui, nós teremos, hoje é a Sasha, que bonitinho, nós teremos uma pequena e rápida, divertida introdução prática ao Rush com o Marcelo Castellani, sensacional Marcelo Castellani, teremos também a Carol Code, teremos o Bruno Rocha falando sobre Python, na próxima semana não, né? No final de semana, temos o sensacional Carlos Panato falando sobre Kubernetes Operator, temos também a Júlia, sensacional Júlia, direto lá de Portugal, falando também aqui no nosso evento. Quem mais que nós temos? Uma galera, o Giovanni Bassi, mano, sensacional, Giovanni Bassi, falando sobre como utilizar ambiente Linux completo no Windows com WSL, VS Code. Mano, muita coisa legal vai acontecer por aqui, certo? Então, você já sabe, quer ficar sabendo de tudo? Quer saber tudo o que está acontecendo? Faz o seguinte, cola no repositório, vem aqui em cima, ó. Além de dar aquele starzinho maroto, faz aquele watch, né, para você saber tudo que vai acontecer de novo com essa bagaça bonitinha de ai meu Deus. Beleza? Deixa eu ver. Olha só, o Adriano, cadê a breja? Durante a semana não, né? Porque senão, eu ia, né? Fica complicado, é mais durante o final de semana. Vamos ver, olha só. Será Gleidson Mazioli vai fechar a Fique em Casa Conf? Olha só, hein, Gleidson, cole na grade. Estamos esperando você, hein, mano? Muito bom, muito bom. Sasha, when you is ready, let me know. And
almost there. It seems to be coming up, but it literally took just 5 minutes right now.
Nice. Okay.
Hold on.
Okay.
I will get to where we were, and then I can share my screen.
So
I know this is ridiculous. I apologize for this. Also, I kind of wanted to have a nice recording of this, but no, so much for that.
No worries.
It's all right. Okay.
No.
Click the share button.
Yeah,
all right.
Nice. This one,
okay.
Right?
Yes, we were on this slide before it all crashed, so yay. Sorry for the interruption. So we can try to continue. Also, we can blame PowerPoint for this. So.
Nice. Good luck and enjoy. The stage is yours again.
All right, thank you. So, the step one usually for any company is to just start consuming open source. So usually if I had like a live audience, I would just start with this question, like, do you use open source, right? And I'm sure for the audience for LINUXtips, everybody's going to be like, of course they use open source, right? But if I talk to like large enterprise companies or maybe like regulated industries, sometimes people tell me like, oh no, we never use open source. But if we look at the software composition reports, we can see that 99% of all organizations use open source, right? And 90% of application code actually is coming from open source. So you are writing just 10% of your business logic, right? And everything else is actually coming from open source. So you can choose to kind of close your eyes and be like, hey, no, this is not happening. We're going to ignore that. Or you can kind of adapt to this reality and say, hey, how can we actually function in this new world? And so one of the important things here is that we want to stay secure while leveraging open source. So, on the GitHub side, we're introducing a lot of different features, which could be really interesting to you if you're developing open source projects as well. So one of the things, last year we acquired Dependabot. So that is a software that is now integrated with GitHub that helps you identify vulnerabilities in the packages that you're consuming. And so if, let's say, you have consumed some vulnerable version of an NPM package, it will alert you. Not only that, but it will also try to create a pull request with a fix if it knows what the fix is. So if you need to update a version, it will suggest the version that's no longer vulnerable. So this is really helpful to automate part of this workflow for open source projects. Right? The other thing is another acquisition that GitHub did last year was SAML. So it's a pattern recognition based tool. And so basically when the vulnerability is identified, it can go through all of your code and identify places in which you are coding in the same way. So you can fix that, right? So if like some code, some particular, SQL query is vulnerable to SQL injection, you can now identify it by surveying your code with SAML. And then lastly, GitHub is now a CNA, so you can report CVEs like security vulnerabilities directly to GitHub. And we also have created a way to sort of report the vulnerability to open source maintainers without zero-daying everybody else, right? So without just sharing it with the public and making it available to the bad actors out there, you can now go and report it in secret to open source maintainers so they can fix it on their own time, right? And all of this is available for free for open source maintainers, and then it's also included in GitHub Enterprise. So these are pretty cool things. Now, I also have like a very important insight for you. This is like important to open source. It's also probably important in your life. So there's an insight: don't be a jerk, right? If you are consuming open source, especially if you are working for a corporation consuming open source, and you're not paying for that software, like the open source maintainers don't owe you anything. And so you should not be going on there and being like, well, where is this going to be fixed and whatever. If you want to help people, you can contribute. So you can contribute code, or you can contribute financially, because again, something that we introduced last year, GitHub is now allowing you to be a sponsor of an open source project. So basically, you can sponsor maintainers and so keep them funded while they're working on the open source project that you're consuming and that you're a fan of. So again, the first step, usually that's where people get started, so to get comfortable with consuming open source, right? The next step is understanding the business need to actually open source something and to contribute, right? So, okay, when does it make sense to make something open source? So it's a business decision, right? And I want to start with kind of a story and an example. So TFVC was part of Team Foundation server, and it was a centralized, it still exists. It's a centralized version control system. So these have been around since 1970, so for 5 decades. They work just fine, right? And if you look at Gartner Magic Quadrant in 2012, Team Foundation Server is actually a leader in the Gartner Magic Quadrant for application lifecycle management, right? So cool, we're doing pretty well with this, ALM management system and also with the version control system. But then in like 2011, 2012, distributed version control systems started gaining popularity. And back then it was actually Git and Mercurial. It was kind of hard to tell which one is going to win in the long run. And I don't know. So for this audience, maybe you've never used a centralized version control system, but in centralized version control system, it's extremely, it's next to impossible to introduce a flow like pull request. So this is what made Git and Mercurial much better choice for open source, because they introduced that, they made it really easy to fork something, and they made it really easy to do pull requests for your changes. So Microsoft had options in 2012, so we could just ignore distributed version control systems altogether, right? And be like, yeah, well, ours is best anyway. We could roll our own distributed version control system, and that is something that would be a default choice for Microsoft in the past. So that definitely happened many, many times before. We could also back Mercurial. So another thing about Mercurial was it worked better on Windows, right? So we could choose to back that system. And then we could back Git, which was mostly popular in the Linux ecosystem. So this would be a choice for us if we wanted to back the Linux ecosystem. And so this kind of shows you that Microsoft was changing mentality in 2012 already, because what we actually chose to do is to back Git. And so there's this nice book that's called The Innovator's Dilemma. It's by Clayton Christensen. And it basically talks about how large companies get disrupted not because they're lazy and didn't see things, but because they were doing the good management practices, right? Because they listened to their customers, and if Microsoft at that point listened to their customers, they would tell them that they need better TFVC, right? Because their customers weren't even aware of Git and what Git was good for, right? But being able to step out of this and say, hey, this disruptive technology, even though it's not really popular yet, is going to have this major business impact, is something that you need to be able to do in a company. So Git actually, we chose to back Git, which I think contributed to Git's success as well. And we also switched the Windows team to Git, which made Git really good on Windows because the Windows team didn't want to suffer while, using Git on Windows. So they, contributed a lot back to the ecosystem. And so, this is kind of a process of building trust. So like when we first open source .NET, like the contributions were pretty minimal, but then you can see that ramp up, and even like companies who are competitors start to contribute to that ecosystem, into that product, because you sort of build that trust that people, that you are really actually good intentioned. And then another advice would be like, don't fork, because forking is like borrowing on a credit card, right? So if you fork it and you say, okay, now we like just do development inside of firewall and we stay inside, and we don't contribute back to upstream, you get further and further from the main project, and then you can't even pull down changes. So you can't even pull down that security fix and anything like that. And so if you do fork a project, obviously what you want to do is continue to merge your changes upstream and contribute to the ecosystem. Now, in terms of business reasons, obviously most companies are in for making money, and so they want to understand like when does it make sense to open source piece of software, right? So one thing that is a good use case is collaboration, and so collaboration actually makes you more agile. So when you open source a piece of software, so for instance, when we ship a new version of, say, .NET Core, it's really hard to convince people to go and upgrade to the new version because people don't have vested interest in actually doing that. But once we ship it in open source, the maintainers, the people involved in this community, will always upgrade and will always sort of test it out and see if it works on their system and whatever. And so that makes you get much faster feedback on your software. The next one is distribution. So distribution is, in terms of licensing, is a big deal. So Microsoft used to ship these things with like a free license, but that doesn't really exactly help us because, so for instance, VS Code, when Microsoft open sourced VS Code, the biggest reason was that we wanted to be shippable on every system. So like every Linux distribution out there, right? And the best way to do this was to attach it to an open source license, which made it really easy for people to ship it on their systems. And then the next one is sort of compatibility, and that people actually start, contributing back to your system, and you basically develop something together. And this is kind of a collaboration between multiple companies, and so or multiple actors, I should say. And then so like in Visual Studio Code, we open source it to get distribution, but then it's actually one of the most heavily contributed to open source projects. And that is for like the core of the product itself. It's not even extensions. Extensions is a whole different world of like major contributions as well from the community. So it's kind of very cool. So things that are not good reasons to open source a project for are public relations. So if you think you're going to get really popular off of that decision, yes, maybe that's going to make the news a couple of times, but honestly, it's not a long-term thing. And so I would not suggest open sourcing a project for that. Then people sometimes cite recruitment. So like, oh, we're going to get a community around this and it's going to be easier to recruit people. It's not always the case. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. For that, your project also needs to get popular and stuff like that. So it's kind of dubious reason. Last but not least, don't open source it if you don't have bandwidth to maintain it. Like sometimes people, like that's a very popular argument. It's like, oh, we don't have time to work on this project anymore. But if we open source it, the community is going to build it. That's not how it works, right? Because at the very minimum, you need to be able to review these PRs, and that's like a full-time job, right? So your ability to own it and know what to merge and sustain that community is a full-time job. And so like don't open source projects that you're not intending to maintain. So for instance, like, I don't know if any of you know the Microsoft Bulb, but we're not going to open source Microsoft Bulb because no one intends to maintain this project anymore for obvious reasons here. So there is this contribution funnel. So 99.9% of your users will consume your open source and will never talk to you, right? They might not even know that they're consuming your open source. It might be like coming in the library dependency tree, right? So 99.9 don't even talk to you just use your software, and that's good. That's what we're here for. Then some of them contribute time, so kind of go create an issue. They, do some fixes, maybe like write documentation. Cool. Then next, you like get some people, minimal amount of people who contribute code, and then you get people who are highly involved. So they kind of own this, they influence the roadmap, they're highly involved in the direction and stuff like that. So basically, if you are open sourcing something, ideally what you want to build is this funnel and kind of direct people into this funnel, so you get more and more people who get into the last two green buckets. And then also, talk is cheap. So if you want to contribute to something, it's not enough to say we're open source to something. It's not even enough to give people money, although that's a good first step. But like mostly, if you want to contribute to open source to a project, just go and contribute code. That's the most valuable thing you can do. So that was step 2. So understanding the business need to contribute. Then we're going to go to step 3. So you need to convince your stakeholders. So coworkers, so convincing your team is probably a good first step. Also included in coworkers, it's a good idea to convince your sales team that you're going to make more money if you open source the software, because once you convince the sales team, then they can go and help you convince your other business stakeholders that this actually makes sense. This, by the way, is how developer teams usually picture sales teams. So management is another level that you need to convince, and then you need to convince lawyers. In Microsoft case, we shipped them t-shirts, so that helped convince them to help us open source some projects. It's a joke, by the way. Then you need to convince senior leadership. And again, at Microsoft case, the senior leadership just changed, and Sasha was very much on the open source side. And we also had some other folks who were very much involved in open source come into senior levels. So that was kind of a lucky thing. And then you need to convince your customers. And that's a big, big thing, actually, because in Microsoft case, that was one of the things that was very difficult, because these people were not used to consuming open source and they did not trust open source. And so that was a big conversation, ongoing conversation, that they can consume it safely and license it safely and everything like that. So we've convinced stakeholders. A little bit more of a double click on that. We need to keep it legal. So from the standpoint of consuming open source, right? If I'm open sourcing my project, I am probably consuming other open source projects inside of it. And I want to make sure throughout my journey that I am staying legal to the projects I'm consuming, actually. So that's another important thing to keep track of. Then we want to be the community. So it's kind of a bad idea to separate yourself from the community, but usually you kind of do it in steps, and you get through that in kind of a gradual fashion. So I'm going to give you another example of something that happened. So in 2015, actually, Microsoft announced Edge, and I was involved in some free front-end development at the time, and I still remember how upset I was at the fact that they were creating another browser with another engine. So Edge has a different engine than Internet Explorer and then Chromium, and so they effectively made the front-end testing metrics even bigger. And so in 2019, Microsoft actually announced that we're adopting Chromium engine in Microsoft Edge browser, and that's a big decision, and it shows you that the mentality is really changing, right? Because when we are talking about contributing to open source, basically now Microsoft engineers, when they're fixing Chromium bugs, for instance, they are contributing back to the upstream. So that means that Microsoft engineers are now fixing Chrome, which is their main competing browser, which is kind of crazy and blows my mind, right? But it's insane, because I've seen I think yesterday I've seen a tweet that someone said oh, I thought, Microsoft Edge adopting Chromium was a bad thing, but then I saw a bug that was there for 6 years finally get fixed, and it's amazing, right? So this is kind of not a zero-sum game. We help each other drive the industry forward. So it usually comes in steps. So if we talk about .NET Core, we basically, first we publish the source. So we kind of we published the source, but we didn't really allow contributions. So that was the first step. Like, you can look at our code, but you can't really participate. Then we allowed some limited contributions, but it was still like Microsoft owns the thing, and then you can maybe try to contribute. Then we really adopted the community workflow. So like Microsoft engineers really went on GitHub and went and used the same workflow as everybody else, right? Then we improved documentation, so kind of making that funnel easier so people know how to contribute to your open source, and then like have truly shared ownership. So basically, people from outside of Microsoft can actually like own their roadmap and stuff like that, right? Because it's very important. And then have fun. Don't forget to have fun. So this was, we shipped mugs to people who like, there was defined as major contribution into .NET Core. So they were shipped a mug with their commit number. And this kind of like just a nice gesture that people who don't expect it suddenly get a mug in the mail. And it's just kind of you having fun with them, because maybe you have never met them in person, but you're allowing them to feel like they're part of your team. And then this was buried in some build video, like Scott Guthrie having that mug. So like, 50 people got that joke, but it was kind of cool, nice gesture. There's a book that came out recently by Jonah Bacon. It's called People Powered, and it's talking about how to build a community and around your open source project or kind of any product or service, and in kind of like how you can both like instrument that funnel, right, to where people actually move towards contribution, and also kind of have fun with it and reward people for their contributions, stuff like that. So you could get ideas from the book. And then again, be the community, we've achieved that. So now we want to have some success. So it's important, if you want to open source more projects and more products, it's important to have some success with the first couple. So for instance, we had some like major news sources cover us open sourcing projects, and that's something that we like Microsoft engineers could show back to executives. This is kind of a nice one. It's like, oh, Hacker News and Tech Meme agree on the #1 topic of the day. This was Microsoft Open Source's .NET Core runtime in 2014. Again, it blew people's minds. But again, don't do this just for PR, right? So if we talk about .NET Core, so this was 2015, this was 2017, and this was 2019. So you can see the contributions now come from everywhere, like it literally like from some islands in the ocean and stuff like that. And so like this is the diversity of thought that we were previously getting, that we're getting now. And it's kind of amazing that we can leverage all that thinking power from different people. This is like the version control in use. It's a survey from 2018. So we can see that Git won by far. And I actually I personally think that probably Microsoft backing Git was a contribution to the fact that they won. But you can see that TFVC is still pretty popular. But we clearly made the right choice with the system that we chose. And then some people are still using zip files and file shares for source control. So yay. And then, yes, if you can see, the top velocity open source projects like VS Code and .NET Core are one of the top ones. And so you can see that basically contributing to so it's easier for a Microsoft team now to go and say, hey, we want to open source the piece of software that we're working on, because they can show the successful projects already. And then we get the great unexpected. So the diversity of thought that gets contributed, like we have really, really, really smart people, including David Fowler, who's very, very smart, working on .NET Core inside Microsoft. But like there was some contribution that sped up the .NET Core engine by like a microsecond or whatever it was. And no one on the team even knew what it was all about. But because they could get a PR from someone external who cared enough to contribute this, and they could review it and make sure that it works and, merge it back into the project, that's the kind of value that you get from, open source worldwide collaboration. So having success is important. And then the last thing that is maybe very cool is like, so inner source This is, I think, a 10-year-old comic. It's about like the organizational charts about major companies. And so like if you zoom in into Microsoft, this used to be very, very accurate. Because it really was about major, departments that all competed with each other, right? Because they didn't want to depend on one another, and B, they all wanted to get promoted, and the best way to get promoted was actually to say, hey, I built something. So every single product department at Microsoft will go and build, say, a test framework or a software shipping framework, right? They would all work on that, and then would put it in their end of year summary and whatever. And so the trouble with incentives is that they sometimes they work, right? In you find this kind of mindset in many companies where internal competition is rewarded. So we Microsoft changed their incentives a few years ago to say that there are 3 circles, and it's not just about what you contribute, but it's also about how you feel, how you build on the work of others, and how you allow others to build on your work. So it's not just about you building the test framework, but what other tools from other engineers did you leverage for that? And how did you allow other people across the company to leverage that code? Because if you think about it, it's crazy for a company of 100,000 engineers to, each build their own tool. So we changed that, and that was a big, basically big advantage, and contributing to inner source. So kind of having open source inside your own firewall, quote unquote, is actually helping with that. So we also see this now data from other companies, such as, for instance, Walmart. They are contributing to each other's projects. So let's say if you have a project that's depending on another project and they don't have the bandwidth to fix the stuff that you need, you can go and pull requests into their project and actually make a fix yourself. So it kind of opens up a whole slew of possibilities that were previously not available. But then also sometimes don't take it too far. So we have a .NET bot that contributes some, routine PRs into our projects, and it contributes actually to a lot of projects. So you can see that it has a lot of contributions. And so the .NET bot started getting job offers from probably also automated recruiters. So in that sense, maybe the GitHub contributions graph is not the end all be all of if you're accomplishing your goals. So that was kind of the quick overview of the Microsoft story of embracing open source, and hopefully there's some takeaways that you can leverage. And we're just a part of a huge ecosystem. And this is amazing to me that we can include all of these people, because we are building software for everybody. And so it is really, really awesome to be building software with everybody as well. So my name is Sasha. I am DivineOps on Twitter. You can find the slides at speaking@sasharosenbaum.com. And please talk to me on Twitter. I would be happy to have a conversation. And I think we're going to have a Q&A right now as well.
Great. It was amazing as usual. So nice, Sasha. Thank you so much. Your talk was amazing as usual. Thank you. I think that with your talk, we could understand better how Microsoft made your journey to open source world. Thank you. It's everything so clear and so nice. So and about you enjoy this talk?
Yeah, this was great. I'm sorry for the technical difficulties.
Nah, but it's a little strange because don't have people and you don't hear the claps.
I know it's unfortunate to not have an audience and to at least not see the audience, but yeah, that's what we have to deal with right now.
Yeah, exactly. So I will get some comments that people did about your talk. Let's get one. 1 second. I see. This one, for example, is interesting. Is in Portuguese, but it's like this presentation would be present in all places that have fear about open source. So nice presentation. Congrats. So let's see. Do you have time to
Yeah,
maybe
absolutely. I'm happy to answer questions. And I think, this presentation was kind of built with like a company in mind. Like if I'm talking to a company that, is kind of scared of open source. So maybe this audience is a lot more embracing open source already, but it's kind of still very interesting to just tell the story of how Microsoft even arrived there, right?
Yeah. Good. Let me check. Look this one.
Yeah, I did not kill
Michelle.
anybody, Michelle. But yes, I served in the Israeli army for 2 years. I was in Air Force, and I was mostly running Linux scripts on computers. So, yeah.
Good. Is there any open source initiative from Microsoft to create an open source operation system?
So
Like
I don't believe, like, there may be things I don't know. Like I say, it's like 135,000 engineers, but I don't believe that Windows is going to be open source, and I don't believe that we're trying to create an open source system. Just because it's really, really huge, right? There's so much code and so many dependencies that would just be very hard to do.
Yeah, it's a huge project. So another one. What did you say for companies that have afraid of open source because they think does not have support?
I mean, it's in part, it is true, right? Because sometimes I hear the opposite argument, right? I hear companies being like, well, we're going with open source because then our own engineers can code for it. I'm like, show me the bandwidth of your team, right? Do you right now have time to do extra things? Are you going to have time to, go and fix things? But so what Microsoft is doing is, for the most important projects for us, we are contributing to them, right? So we have dedicated engineers paid by Microsoft that their full-time job is to contribute something like Chromium, right? And so that's what we do.
Yeah. Look, Natalia, good question, Marlo. Most major Brazilian companies do not implement or are afraid to implement open source for not having centralized support. Will it be true? Maybe. Yeah.
So no, I think there's a lot of that in the US. I think probably even more than in Brazil. Like that at least my impression from talking to you all. Again, I think that if you look at the top contributed open source projects right now, actually a lot of them are led by companies. Like you will see Facebook and Google and Microsoft, leading a lot of this. So these projects actually do have support. And then there's the other option where like you have some like Red Hat having the support for something that's open source, right? So different levels of that.
Yeah, for sure. Sasha, do you use VS Code?
Of course I use VS Code. What else would I use?
Nice. The last one, okay? Can you describe a couple of example highlights that changed since you joined Microsoft?
Yeah, so like Chrome was one of Microsoft Edge was one of my highlights, because like literally that was right before I joined Microsoft, when I learned that they were releasing Edge, and I was so upset about it. And now like you can see that it's a completely different, like you would have to go. So if you look like 10 years ago, I wasn't there yet, but I was in the, partner ecosystem and whatever. 10 years ago, you had to get like 100 approvals to contribute one line of code to like an open source project like Eclipse or something like that, even if it was good for Microsoft to do this, right? And now like we have Microsoft engineers going and like solving problems for Linux, right? Because Linux runs on Azure, and if it runs better on Azure, that's better for everybody. And that means that like it's also going to run better on AWS. But again, it's better for everybody. So this is a different way of thinking right now.
Yeah. True. The Glades. This is not.
I would be happy to be in Vitória. It was so beautiful. I will say, I think Michelle was telling me this. Everybody always wants to go to São Paulo and Rio, right? And then like nobody ever thinks about other cities in Brazil. And like Vitória was so beautiful. I'm like, I will go to all the small cities in Brazil, and it's like just amazing.
Yeah, definitely is an amazing city to visit. Yeah. I think. Do you have the last one? Maybe.
Sure.
Is it good? Yeah. Here, Wellington. I'm not sure if it was mentioned, but how is the decision of what is added to the roadmap and what don't? Is a community decision or Microsoft has the last word? It's like a
So I
board.
think, yeah, for the projects you own, you have the last word, but that doesn't mean that you disregard the community, right? If the community is voting, like, 200 people are saying, hey, we need to go fix this, and then your product manager should be paying attention to that and should be putting this on the top of their roadmap. Every now and again, there's something that community might not know, like we have a compatibility issue with another product that we have to fix that we can't even talk about, right? So then the product manager needs to pay attention to both external and internal factors for this. But yeah, you own the community, but you really want to tread that line where like you treat the people from the outside about the same as you treat the people on the inside.
So nice, so nice. Again, Sasha, thank you so much for to be here talking to us. It's amazing. It's so amazing to have people like you speaking to us, because in Brazil it's a little difficult to have other people speaking about technology. Every time it's just Brazilian speaking in Portuguese, and so important to have other people speaking English, because look me, I need to improve my English. So in Brazil, it's so common people with problem to speak in English. So this is a way to stimulate people knows more about technology for sure, but about English as well. Thank you.
Thanks. I hope there's no language barrier, because unfortunately I can understand a tiny bit of Spanish, but unfortunately I'm lost in Portuguese completely. So I don't even know what anybody's saying. So,
do you know speak some words in Portuguese? Maybe do you remember one word
like,
or something like?
Thank you, maybe, like, you know what I mean? Like that's all I that's all I can say about
Nice. And I remember that you love the foods in Brazil, right?
Oh yeah, that was beautiful.
Yeah. Do you remember the one that you definitively
I would
love?
love to have some cheese bread. That would be amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would, like, I think I just saw someone bake that, like, post on social media, and I'm like, oh my God, I really want to have this.
Nice. Thank you, Sasha. And, pessoal, muito obrigado por colarem aí. Olha só, tivemos a Sasha hoje aqui, sensacional, direto lá do GitHub da Microsoft. Muito bom para entender e para acabar com esse preconceito que a gente tem, às vezes, com a Microsoft, com o Linux. Hoje, os caras da Microsoft ajudam demais o Linux, não somente o Linux, como o universo open source. Então, é muito legal mesmo, certo? Mais uma vez, muito obrigado. Amanhã tem Talk aqui de novo. Amanhã nós temos o nosso querido idolatrado Marcelo falando sobre o Rust. Então, vejo vocês amanhã, porque vai ser super divertido mais uma vez. Sasha, thank you. I have a slogan here, and so when I finish a video, every time I say vai, right? Mm-hmm. So could you speak vai for us?
Sure.
To end this video?
LINUXtips, bye.
Oh, fantástico. Thank you. But tchau, pessoal. Bye-bye. Thank you.